campers, it is Scouty Steve here, and it was a little bit wet outside today, so we're coming inside. We're going to be going over some scout skills today. We're going to be going over first aid and medicine. So first aid is really important wherever you go, whether you're going on a camping trip or if you're just going out to the store. It's always helpful to know how to fix certain situations if someone gets hurt. Before we get into first aid skills, did you guys know that medical treatment actually started way back in ancient Greece? So the ancient Greeks, they were first to separate medicine from philosophy and religion. So what that means, until the Greeks, ancient people automatically assumed that all injuries and ailments and injuries, all of that stuff, was caused by magic or angry gods like Zeus. But it wasn't until a wise doctor, Hippocrates, who suggested that the way people live their lives could be just as easily be explained their health issues. He also was credited for being the first to establish the 4 signs of inflammation: redness, swelling, heat, and pain. So ancient Greeks were perfect and helpful in starting us to figure out what all this stuff is, first aid. So we'll be back in just a minute, and I'll have the first aid kit opened up so we can take a look inside. Hi everyone, and we're back, and as you can see, I've taken all the stuff, most of the stuff, out of this first aid kit and laid it across the table for you guys to see. Now, it seems like there is a lot of stuff here because that's true. There's a lot of stuff that's in this first aid kit. And if you're going out on a hike, for example, you might not want to take this big first aid kit with you. Now, if you're going on like a pack event or a scout camp out, your troop leader might have a big first aid kit on them just for safety reasons if anyone gets hurt with anything. But if you're going on a hike, just a couple people, or just going in the woods, taking a long hike, it's always good to have a small first aid kit on you. Now, if you take it open, look inside. Now, there's only a couple things in here. There's some stuff that should be in here. You want to make sure you have everything prepared before you go ahead of time. But in this little first aid kit, some things we have are alcohol prep pads. So these are sanitizing wipes, just in case if someone gets hurt, if there's a cut or scrape. These are used to clean off the wounds, make sure it's clean and sterile, so no infections come of that cut or scrape. You also have different types of band-aids. So after you clean the area, one of the last things you do is put band-aids on it. Now, there's different shapes of band-aids. These are small, circular ones. It's sort of hard to see, but those are for smaller little bumps or pimples or tiny little cuts. You could have bigger band-aids. If I go in here, these are for smaller cuts. There's tons of size of band-aids and bandages that you're going to need or use. So in between putting the alcohol prep pad to clean off the area and putting the band-aid on, one of the really good things to have is antibiotic ointment. So this one in particular, you can find it at any store or whatever. These ointments are used just to make sure the area after you're cut, before you put the band-aid on, stays perfectly clean. You don't want to just put the band-aid on and leave it like that. It could get infected, you could get sick from it. This is make sure the area that no bacteria grows and you are perfectly safe. There's also, you might have bigger bandages and sterile pads in your small first aid kit. These are just, if you have a bigger cut, say on your arm or your knee, you put these, after cleaning the area, you put these down and wrap gauze or tape around them just to keep it secure if you don't have any big bandages. So we'll get all this small stuff out of the way for the small first aid kit, and we'll start going over all the stuff that's on the table. Now, there's a lot of stuff here, and I'll make sure to go over with you guys as much as possible so you guys have a good understanding of what stuff does. So starting off from this side of the table, hand sanitizer is a really important thing to have. So if you're going on a camping trip, you might not always have access to clean water, clean hot water, and soap. So a hand sanitizer, it'll kill lots of germs to make sure that you clean your hands before helping someone if they're sick or there's a cut or something, and to make sure that you stay safe and they stay safe. They don't get any more sick than they already are. After using the hand sanitizer, it's always important to use gloves. If someone is cut with you, you might get sick from any of the blood they have. You might get contaminated. You don't want to get sick if you're treating them. So always make sure after using hand sanitizer to put some gloves on. And also, given this current time, it is also a very important thing to have a mask in your first aid kit. just so that you stay safe and the people around you stay safe. So moving on, we have a lot more stuff here. So what we have here is a CPR mask. So if someone is having a heart attack, these are very important to use. You give these, you give breaths to people after doing compressions on their chest, and it helps them get better as quick as possible. Along with the chest compressions you do, you give them the rescue breaths. You put it on their face, and you breathe into it. You have the mask so you don't get sick as well, because you don't want mouth-to-mouth contact. You want to make sure you have this with you, again, so you don't get sick from if they have any sicknesses. It's to make sure that you're safe and to get them better as quick as possible. So we also have some other stuff over here. So there's a lot of different ointments you can find. This one in particular is burn gel. So burns are a really bad thing that you guys can get. So burns are anywhere from sunburn if you stay out in the sun too long and don't put on sunscreen, or if you put your hand and get on a hot stove, or if you get burned by fire. Burn gel is really useful. It can make sure if it's really hot and hurts, it can cool off the area, so hopefully it doesn't hurt as much and it can be treated easier and not get any more damage than it already is. We also have, there's some other different ointments and sprays, so this is another thing for cuts and scrapes. It's a first aid treatment. You spray on the area, and it helps with cleaning it and sanitizing the area, as well as killing off any bacteria that may be around it. So some other creams that you can find, or other sprays. These two in particular are anti-itch creams. So say you get bit by a mosquito, these are really helpful because those mosquito bites can be really itchy. It's one of the things that, even though it's really small, it hurts a lot. So you put this on a mosquito bite, it cleans it out and makes sure it doesn't get any more infected. And it also cools the area so it doesn't have that really annoying itchy feeling. It's another itch cream. It's also good for rashes, so if you get poison ivy or something like that, there's rashes, or just irritations from hiking if you're wearing not comfortable socks and shoes and it's rubbing constantly and it gets really itchy and sore. These really help for making the area soothing and cool so they don't hurt as much. So some other things we have here. So padding, going back to what I said before about bandages, if you have a really big cut or scrape, I'll open one of these up for you guys. If you have a really big cut or scrape, these are really good to have if it's bleeding a lot. So you lay these on top of the cut or scrape, wherever it may be. It helps stop the bleeding, and also you're able to wrap tape around it or wrap a bandage around it just to hold it tight so the bleeding stops and doesn't get any worse. There's also some different types of padding. This one is a sponge padding, so it can soak up the blood better and stop the bleeding better so it doesn't get any worse. There's also this type of padding. So this, going with this, you put this on the wound. This is a wrappable padding. It's a bandage. So I'll take this out for you guys to see. So this bandage, after I put the padding on my arm, I would wrap the bandage around it just to keep it in place. Either this or we have here tape. Either will do, as long as it keeps the padding in place so it stops the bleeding. So another really important thing you guys could have in a first aid kit. So this, it doesn't look like much, but it's actually a blanket. If someone is really sick, if they're really cold, these actually reflect the sunlight. They keep in heat so the person doesn't get as cold. Even if they're wearing really heavy jackets, this really thin blanket will surprisingly keep them really warm. So this right here, this is moleskin. There's plenty of different types of moleskin. So say you're going on a hike, you don't have really comfortable shoes, and behind your ankle, it's really sore, there's a rash there, there's a pimple, there's a bump, a blister. Moleskin really helps at stopping any more irritation you get from it. So you can cut the moleskin around to go around the blister, and it'll stop any more rubbing you could have around it. So this right here, it's a cold pack. I'm sure all of you guys have this in your freezer. Ice packs, for example. This is a more portable one, so it doesn't need to be constantly cold. So what you guys do with these certain ones, there's a chemical reaction that goes on in them. You break them up, you crush them, and they get cold with the chemicals inside. So say you have a really bad burn, you can put this cold pack on there. So we have a couple things left in the first aid kit. So this little gadget right here, it's a tick key. So I'm sure at least some of you guys have gotten ticks before. They're not the best thing. They're really a really bad thing to get on you. There's these little bugs called ticks. They will bite you and they will stay there. You always want to have a tick key on you, especially if you're going hiking in the woods where there's tall grass. These are able to safely take off a tick. You don't want to pull a tick off really hard, or some of it might be still stuck in the wound and cause more infections for you. With a tick key, you're able to put it on the head of the tick and twist it and then easily pull the tick out. Either this or a pair of tweezers are really good to have for ticks. And if you do end up getting a tick, it's always good to save the tick afterwards. Ticks carry some really bad diseases, and you want to make sure you can save the tick to send it to your doctor so they can see if anything the tick had infected you, so you can be safely treated. So the tick key and tweezers are really good for getting off ticks, but tweezers are also really helpful if you have a splinter, for example. Splinters can be really painful. These help you more easily pull any splinters out or any small things in your skin, so you more safely. So you can more safely pull the things out, just so you don't cause any more harm to yourself. If you're digging at it with your hands, it's not the best thing to do. It's really harmful for you. So the tweezers make it easier and more safely to pull any splinters or pieces of dirt or any small things out. So these couple things. So yes, these are paint stirrers. Any sticks will do, but it's really good to have a stick with you or some sort of thing like this for splints. So what splints are? Say you have a broken bone, or you hurt yourself on hiking, your leg hurts, or even if you hit your arm. Splints are really good to keep your arm or leg stationary. So say I hurt my elbow, and you don't want to hurt it if you bend it, if it moves. The splint will keep your elbow still, so you can more easily treat it and not hurt yourself more than it already is. If you're hiking, you put it on your knee, your leg will be stiff and straight, but it'll help you stay safer and not get more hurt than you already are. You're not going to want to use one of these, though, for your fingers. That's what these little gadgets are for. These are splints for your fingers. So they're just little metal things surrounded by foam. Say I hurt my finger or broke the bone, unfortunately, if I was doing something really silly. You can always put your finger into the splint for your finger. You wrap the Velcro around it, and it would keep it so your finger can't bend, like here. So the last couple things we have in this first aid kit. So as I was going over before, bandages. Band-aids are really helpful to have for any minor cut or big cut. There's plenty of sizes after you clean the wound and put some ointment on it. You always want to make sure you cover it with band-aids or any type of bandage, just so it doesn't bleed more and so it doesn't get any more infected. And if you aren't good at knots, these are really good to have, clothespins or safety pins. Usually sometimes after using bandages, you would tie a knot to hold the bandage steady so it doesn't move or come loose. Safety pins can do the exact same thing, except you don't need to tie any knots. They're simpler, you just clip them on so they hold the bandage tighter. And we'll be back in just a minute after looking at all this stuff, after I clean this away, and we'll just go over a couple simple first aid situations you might have when you're going on a hike or a camping trip. And we're back again, Scouts. I'm joined by my assistant, Bob. Thank you, Bob, for being here. I'll give you a little pat on the head. So we're going to be going over a couple small injuries you might encounter when you're hiking or walking around, doing any scouting activity. So we're going to go over some small cuts, some larger cuts or scrapes, and some head wounds. So whenever you're doing any injury whatsoever, you want to make sure the area around you is safe. If someone is hurt, you don't want to be hurt as well. So you always want to just take a look around, see if anything is around that might hurt you as well. And down here, yeah, it seems relatively safe. So the next thing you want to do is always to make sure to put your gloves on, just so you don't get sick from anyone that you're helping to get better. And let me just grab, oh, thank you, Bob, for lending me a hand. It's really helpful. So we're going to first go over some simple cuts, small cuts and scrapes. So you'll always want to make sure, so say he's cut on his arm right here. You want to make sure you clean off the area with a moist towelette or an alcohol wipe. So I'll take the alcohol wipe out of the package. Take that out. Make sure to open up the towelette and just wipe off and clean the area. Make sure if there's any dirt around, it's sanitized and perfectly clean. So I'll clean that off. So you want to, after you clean it off, you want to either use some ointment or some medicated spray just to spray the area. There we go. Just clean it off. Clean off a bit so it won't get any more infected than it already is. You don't want to get sicker than you already are. It's a very bad thing when it comes to first aid. You want to take your Band-Aid, open up the package. It's easier said than done with rubber gloves on. There we go. And there we go. Open up the package. It took a little bit longer than I thought it would. Alright, so make sure you take the Band-Aid fully out of the package. Take the edges off normally. You want to go ahead and put the Band-Aid right over the wound, right over the small cut. There you go. Wipe it down with any alcohol swab or antibacterial wipe. Put some spray or ointment on it. Put the Band-Aid on. Now I'll take that Band-Aid off. We'll go over some bigger cuts or scrapes. So get all this out of here. Just wipe it down so it's no residue left over from the prior injury. So say he has a bigger cut on his arm, it's bleeding really badly, little Band-Aids like this aren't going to help. So you're going to take your big pad, it's really good, you put it over the wound. If the person is helping you, you have them hold it down, so pressure, so it stops the bleeding. So they'd be holding it down, and you'd use either tape, or in this case a bandage, to wrap around the wound. So he's holding it down. You're going to want to wrap above and below where the wound is. Wrap it tight, but not too tight where it hurts him. Tight enough just to hold the bandage in place so it doesn't bleed more. So you're going to want to wrap it around, up and down, up and below the wound. Keep wrapping it until it's fully covered. And then with leftover, you go ahead and tie a knot around it. Don't want to tie it too tight though, where the person might get hurt. So, assuming that knot will be tied around it, it will be in place, or you can use a safety pin to hold it in place so it doesn't loosen up. Now, if the person is ever bleeding and the pad they have they're holding down to pressure to stop the bleeding gets really bloody, never take it off. That's the worst thing you could do. If you take it off, it might bleed a lot more. So always just take another pad, another piece of cloth, and just put it over it so it doesn't bleed anymore, it doesn't get any worse. So the last thing we'll go over is head wounds. So head wounds are really good, say you have a cut or a small scrape on your head, they're really good to have a bandana to help. All scouts have their scout neckerchief, or you can have a simple bandana, this to wrap around the head so it doesn't get any more cut, so it stops the bleeding. However, not to be confused with a banana. Really good source of potassium, by the way. So you want to take out the bandana, or scout neckerchief in this case. We'll move you over, Bob. So you're going to wrap it up a bit so it's rolled a bit more so bleeding or blood doesn't come through, so it's wrapped pretty firmly just to have some pressure down, pressure down on the wound. So say he has a small cut right here on his forehead. I want to put pressure with the bandana on the head wound. And this is a bit small. Bob has a big head. But what you would end up doing is you would tie a knot in the back after wrapping it around a couple times. And just tie it off in the back or the front, wherever the end of the bandana is. Just to hold it in place so any cut he has on his head or scrape or bump doesn't bleed anymore or doesn't become more swollen. Well, thank you, Bob, for your help. Thank you, Scouts, for watching. First aid is a really important skill to have. It's a very serious thing to have, so you don't want to ever joke about first aid, because if you're hurt or someone else is hurt, you want to make sure they're treated properly just to make sure they don't get more injured than they already are. So you stay safe and they stay safe. Well, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to stay safe, stay healthy, and wash your hands. This is Scout Steve. Good night, guys.